This is Arthur Riley, pastor of Mount Calvary Church. If you found this, it means the rats are back. If they are, beware.
When I first moved back in, I found a tape that my dad recorded. On it, he admits to killing a man named Royce Cobb.
What?
Something's not right.
Things have been happening in this house. Dylan is acting strange. Dee?
Mom?
Dead animals start showing up all around our property.
It's you! You want me to check your room?
No, I like it when he visits.
When who visits?
There was a man who lived down there. Everybody called him the Piper. His old ice cream drove one of them trucks.
Hey, I was calling to find out the reason for Dylan's absence today.
What?
All the kids followed him like the Pied Piper.
No, I dropped him off myself this morning.
There's another child that went missing earlier today, Nathan Hudson.
Let's look at the original story of the Pied Piper. The kids were let out of town, just like the rats.
Don't. You'll only make it worse.
As a parent, you have one job.
This is Arthur Riley, pastor of Mount Calvary Church.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Super Duper Oddcast. I'm sitting in for Curtis Reynolds, our usual host with the most. He's out doing Curtis things out in LA. I'm very happy to have my guy, director, writer, producer, Will Canon, director of The Confession, playing on multiple platforms. I'll tell you all that. We'll have all that in the description. Good morning, Will. How you doing?
Terrence, I am great, and it's great to see you, man. It's great to see your face as always.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. So, first of all, I got to be transparent. Will cast me in my first lead role in a movie called Demonic, starring Frank Grillo and Maria Bello and Scott Misach and a bunch of other folks. So he's always going to have a special place in my heart. And I was blessed, as you can see from the trailer, to also work with him on The Confession. So I'm going to get straight to the point, man. What made you want to be a storyteller? How did you become a director? What was your path?
Man, I just think I was always interested in stories, I think from a pretty young age, you know. I never really considered it as like a career path. I never really thought of it. You know, I grew up in Texas, in a suburb of Dallas called Arlington, and I didn't grow up around people who were filmmakers or, you know, writers or novelists. So I never really it wasn't really on my radar as something you could do. But I think once I sort of got a little bit older, it was definitely a hobby in like high school, you know. And I did a lot of stuff with the camera, and mostly comedy stuff, and kind of joke, like playing pranks on people, just silly stuff. And then once I got a little bit older and started thinking about, man, I need to kind of choose a career. I'm getting older. I had started college, and it just kind of said, you know, I need to figure out what I'm going to do and what I'm going to study. And so I chose film, and I think I wasn't conscious of it, but in sort of the back of my brain, you know, I had a love for storytelling and a love for films that had kind of been growing, even though consciously I was sort of more passionate about other things at that time in my life. But I think this thing was kind of there underneath the surface, you know what I mean? Kind of like working its way into my brain. So that's kind of it, man. And then I decided, you know, I I was in school and I was like, I need to study something. I need to pick a major. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. So I decided to study film and just loved it. You know, it was like it kind of wasn't work. No, go ahead.
Where did you go to college?
Where? So
Yes.
I went to 3 different schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a basketball player growing up. So as hard as that is to believe when you look at me now, but I played at a little school called the University of Dallas, which is in Irving, and then I went there for a year, played basketball for a year, and then went to Baylor for a year. I didn't play at Baylor. My dad actually played at Baylor, but I didn't play at Baylor. I had sort of given up the dream of basketball at that point, and just stuck to like pickup games in the gym there. And then I went to NYU to study film like my final 2 years. So like I always joke that like I'm the only person in history that's been to like those 3 schools because it's just such a random, like 3 schools to go to. So
And look,
yeah.
I don't care what level of collegiate ball. If you play collegiate ball, that J had to be wet.
Well, thank you. Nobody who I know now believes me. You know what I mean? But I appreciate you for getting that in there. You know,
They don't believe I was a speedy, sticky hand wide receiver either. So, what attracted you to the horror genre, in particular?
I think there's kind of 2 main things for me. I think I just love like sort of the ability to tell like those sort of twisty, turny stories that are like visceral and exciting, and I think horror in particular and horror thriller, kind of that sort of side of the storytelling spectrum, you can kind of do that. And I just remember being a kid and being excited about scary stories and like in the back of your head, this stuff's not true, but you kind of suspend disbelief and you kind of, well, what if it is? Well, what if there was? What if this did really happen? What if there was a haunting at that house? What if there was a ghost? What if there was a this or that? And I think that's just fun. Yeah, I mean, I see my kids doing it now.
Right.
I mean, I see my kid. I have an 8-year-old. I see him asking me, "Hey, Dad, is so and so real? Is this real?" He'll hear little stuff from his friends at school, and is it real? And you can kind of see his eyes light up. Like,
Right.
what if it was? So I think that's it. And then I think also too the ability to kind of with horror, you can layer in depth and substance and real kind of issues and things underneath it. And I think you've seen that a lot from movies recently and this year in particular.
Right.
That I think is really cool about the genre.
What I love about the 2 films that I'm very familiar of yours, and from what I saw in researching the other ones, they're all character driven.
Mm.
I love that. They're not just like boo, jump scares, bloody gore. You're dealing with the human experience and why. Why is this person on this journey? Why are they the way they are? And so that's what and like you said, we've recently with Jordan Peele and Sinners and Weapons, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They all I think they've upped the ante. So what was the inspiration for Confession? What started that nugget?
It was really the idea of somebody finding out this secret about a family member after they had passed away. With the confession, she discovers this cassette tape and her dad's left this confession on it. And he says he committed this horrible crime. And I just thought it was a really, and he's left these clues, and the clue, I thought it was an interesting kind of jumping off point for a story. I like the idea of somebody who'd gone out to make it big and had some level of success, but was kind of having to come home and her tail's kind of between her legs, and she's kind of shuffling back home with the son and trying to pick up her life and doesn't want to be there. Her son doesn't want to be there. I just thought it was a great kind of jumping off point, and then what was kind of odd about it was that I started the story in 2018, and then my dad passed away a couple years later. So it was kind of a weird, it brought new kind of insights into it for me, going, not my dad didn't leave any weird secrets for for me to discover or anything when he passed,
Right.
but it was, there is like, if you've lost a parent or lost a loved one, all of a sudden you have all these questions that you want to ask them that you never really thought about or you took for granted, and then they're gone, and you're like, but there's so much I want to know about you. There's so many questions I want to ask you. In my life, it was sort of like my personal experience. It was more like the positive side of that. I would want to ask my dad all these like really like questions that are like, like very, I don't know, positive, whatever. But for Naomi, it's the opposite. Did you really kill this guy? What what is going on? You know what I mean? I just thought it was such a great, kind of jumping off point.
No,
So,
I can totally relate, man. My mother died in 1998. She was 54. I was about 34. And it was my responsibility to go to her house and go through all her stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Sister was working, and my mother kept meticulous notes.
Wow, huh?
She had tons of notes, and she kept telling us, specifically me, because you know how men are. She was like, go through my stuff with a fine tooth comb. Don't just throw stuff or give stuff away. Go do
Yeah.
it. I found almost $800. Nothing larger than a 20.
Wow. Just in different places?
Different places. I
Wow.
don't know if she did it on, she'd have them in purses. She'd have it in a book.
Hmm.
And then she had these notes when she got sick. She had emphysema, so she was sick for 10 years.
Okay.
She wrote these missives that I didn't even know existed,
Wow.
which should have taken me 2 hours, an hour to clear her apartment. I went there from like 8 in the morning. I didn't leave till 6 in the evening.
Wow.
And I was physically and emotionally drained. She had clippings of people that I went to kindergarten with, their marriage notices.
Wow.
It was just,
Wow.
can you imagine? So
Well, I could see like I was gonna say like the emotions of something like that. I mean that's such a heavy
it was
experience. But
it
are
was
you
heavy.
glad you're able to do it? Like, are you glad you had that experience?
I was
Yeah.
because I sat there, man. Because my whole thing was just get this stuff out of here.
Yeah.
Because we were giving stuff away. She'd already said, give this to this person, that to this person,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. In death, she was still giving. That's who she was.
Yeah. That's cool.
So,
That's really cool.
yeah. So I can relate to that. Were you? We've got this Pied Piper. Well, I did you an injustice because I didn't really tell the audience the premise of the story. So basically, the confession is a modern twist on the story of the Pied Piper set in rural Texas. A struggling musician moves back into her childhood home and discovers a recording of a deceased father confessing to a grisly murder, which sets off a chilling chain of events. And one of the Pied Piper is kind of a starting point for your movie. And without giving too much away, I wanted to ask you, were you familiar with the history of Lake Lanier in Georgia?
No. No. Tell me about it. I'm still not.
Okay, so Lake Lanier was an area that was inhabited. It was a black town.
Okay.
The government came in and they wanted to take the town, the same story.
Similar.
with-
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what has happened, and when you get a chance, go look up Lake Lanier.
I will.
They've got documentaries. I'm surprised they don't have a movie out. So what's happened is over the last 20, I don't know when it happened, when they did it, but they moved everybody out of the city. They filled it in, made it a lake, and dozens of people have died in that lake in the last 20 years. All parts of the lakes. If you really go under the lake, and if you go with a radar or cameras and stuff, you actually see what's left of some of the buildings.
Houses and structures and stuff.
Absolutely.
So interesting.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff initially you would think, okay, boaters are getting caught up on debris from
Yeah.
these things. But I mean, it's like I moved to Georgia in 2018, and of it's like Lake Lanier strikes again. Something like Lake Lanier.
Wow.
So, urban myth, right?
Yeah, sure.
So then I'm reading your story. I go look up Lake Lanier. And it is, every summer, spring, when people go to the lake, there's crazy stuff to happen. And then when it gets to Black Twitter, it goes to a whole another level of the urban myth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's crazy, man. And the saying is that those are the souls of the people who lost their homes and stuff.
Yeah.
They're getting paid back and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say your story was set in Texas. But we shot in Wilmington. So what led to the decision to shooting Wilmington?
It was that part of it. Like, I scouted Texas, and I shot my first film, Brotherhood. I shot in Texas, and I grew up there and made a bunch of short films there, so I know Texas pretty well. But the difference between North Carolina and Texas at that point was the tax incentives, and unfortunately, that's a huge component. I mean, you want it. You're making a movie. You want it to just be about the movie and only the sort of pure creative decisions, but you have to consider that, and I, as much as it bummed me out to not shoot in Texas and not shoot where I grew up, I loved Wilmington, North Carolina, where we shot. I loved being there. I loved North Carolina in general. So we ended up in a great place. But it was mostly economic in terms of the why we didn't shoot in Texas and why we scouted other places and that whole thing.
What's your superpower as a director, as a storyteller?
Man, I one of the things I pride myself on is just being able to kind of like grind on a project, and be it at the script stage or at the edit stage during production, just like hanging in there and revising and searching and trying things, I just that's the thing that I enjoy. And I read something, I can't remember who it was, but I read it was a rock climber, and he said, I can kind of hang in there. His like sort of special ability was like, I can just kind of hang in there and tolerate hanging in there longer than anybody else. I resonated with that. And once you're bored of working on the script and you're moving on to something else, I can still kind of be here and trying to figure it out.
I've worked with you on 2 projects, and you're a great leader. We always talk in sports analogies and stuff. You're a great quarterback, point guard. I've seen you under some very challenging circumstances, but you've never changed.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
I've never seen you get uncool. And it starts at the top, and that's also reflective in your crews. You're the one that sets the tone. And in both of the sets in 2 different cities that I've shot with you, they follow. And quite frankly, these were both 2. I wouldn't call it. They're not as experienced. They weren't as experienced crews as in L.A. or New York, because they were kind of newcomers. But
the big movies that you're used to working on. Like the big.
They were great at that small scale. There's a million things on any level. There's a million things that can go wrong, but especially when you're on these, limited budgets things where you don't have $100 million to play with. So one more thing before we wrap it up. The first film that I worked with you on was Demonic, and then before that you directed Brotherhood and a couple of other shorts. What's the difference now in trying to get a project going from 10, 15 years ago today with our new business model? What's the most challenging thing about what's going on now?
What's the most challenge? I think the biggest thing that I see is that the business, especially lately in the last 2 3 years, has really just contracted. And that there's just there's so fewer buyers. Whether you're trying to sell a script or you finished a movie, you're trying to sell the movie. I remember when Brotherhood was coming out, or we were like Brotherhood premiered at South by Southwest, and when we were taking that movie there, it just seemed like there were so many buyers. I mean, it seemed like there were probably 15 or 20. Um,
Right.
yeah, the studios had independent wings. So it was like Paramount had Insurge, and like Brotherhood was getting interest from all those places, and then it was also getting interest from the independent distributors. There were so many different avenues you could go down, and I think now it was like once it came time to sell The Confession, it was like there were just way fewer companies that were buying independent films. So I think that was the biggest. That's the biggest change I see. Is that sort of like you've got a few shots, but if A, B, C, and D aren't interested, then there's not a lot of other places you can go.
Like you said,
So.
they've all contracted.
I want to say too, real quick, just get back to your last question about
Yes.
cruise and stuff. I think I put this online someplace, but it was great having you in The Confession for so many reasons, so many different reasons, and you're such a talented actor. I love working with you. And it was also, you're talking about crews. There was no one on that crew on the production side that I'd ever worked with before. Like literally nobody I'd ever worked with before, which hadn't happened to me in 20 years. I'd never been on a set probably since film school, since I never worked with anybody before. But the two people that were on set that I had worked with were you and Scott Mechlowitz, who I worked with on Demonic. So it was great. It was also like it was like Terrence is showing up, and it was I was like, okay, this is gonna be good because it's Terrence. It was also like I was excited about the role you were playing because I thought you kind of had some fun, flashy stuff to do. So I was like, I'm excited to see Terrence do this. And then there was also just sort of like from a comfort level, I was like, oh, I've got a friend. There's someone I worked with before, like like it was just it's that how it is on set. It's just having that comfort level was great. So I really appreciate you being there and bringing it the way that you did, man. Because you're great in the movie.
I can equate that to like if we do guest spots on a TV show. Basically, you're parachuted into
Yeah.
a unit that's already moving. So when you see familiar faces, you're like, okay,
Yeah, like, thank goodness you're here. Thank goodness you're here. Yeah.
right. It's like getting traded to another. Okay, that's my guy who I played with in
Yeah.
high school.
I played with him over here. Okay, it's gonna be okay. I don't know the rest of the 10 guys, but there's at least one guy or two guys.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
what's next for you? You kind of are you in a position to talk about what's next, or you want to keep that?
Yeah, I'm hoping. I've written another script that's a horror script that's actually based on. I had this horrible experience trying to get home. I think I probably told you about this before, but I tried to get home from Wilmington for my daughter's first birthday. I just had this horrible travel experience. I found myself with 3 strangers in a town car, basically at midnight, driving from Wilmington to Raleigh to try to catch a flight. And as I was in this car, going through the backwoods of North Carolina at midnight with strangers, I was just like, this is the beginning of a horror film, man. And then it got worse from there, which is the bad part. So anyway,
I love the little bit that you told me. I was like, ooh, I can't wait to see that. That's tangible, man. That's like you're dealing with today's technology.
Yes.
Interacting with people and all that good stuff. So before I let you go, man, we've got this thing that we usually do. I forgot what Curtis calls it. He's going to kill me. But I'm going to say something and you just give me the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Okay.
Rosalind.
Oh, man. Friends.
The Brotherhood.
Oh, man. First thing that comes to mind, fun.
Demonic.
Tough.
The Confession.
Gratifying.
your favorite condiment?
Ketchup.
My guy, that's mine too. Hey guys, you can see The Confession. It's available on Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Fandango at home, Google Play, YouTube, Comcast, Xfinity, Cox, Charter, Spectrum, DirecTV, Dish, Verizon, Fios, I don't know how you say that, Altice, Telus and Bell, that's in Canada. We're going to have all that information in the description on YouTube and elsewhere. Will, thank you for being our guest on Super Duper Oddcast today, my brother.
Thank you for having me, man. It was great. It's always, anytime we get to see you, it's a good day.
Likewise. I'll be in touch, man. Thanks again. You have a great day.
That was great. Thanks, Terrence.